Hello, how are you? If you like my video, please subscribe. My name is Ava and my husband, Daniel, used to laugh in the kitchen while making coffee, and my sister Clara visited often, bringing flowers and advice I never asked for. We were planning a future, saving every extra dollar. By the time my pregnancy was near its end, we had put away 18,000 pounds, proud of ourselves for being careful and hopeful. When my son was born, I named him Leo. He was small, warm, and impossibly quiet. I held him against my chest and thought the world had finally forgiven me for every past mistake. For 3 days, I lived inside that feeling. Then a doctor came in with tired eyes and words that landed like stones. He said my baby had a rare genetic condition. He said it was no one's fault. But Daniel's face hardened, and Clara's eyes never left me. That night, the house felt different. The walls didn't echo joy anymore. They held blame. Grief did not arrive quietly in our house. It came like a storm that never moved on. After we returned from the hospital, the rooms felt smaller, as if the walls had leaned in to listen. Leo's crib stayed where it was, beside our bed, untouched. I could not bring myself to move it. Daniel could not bring himself to look at it. Clara, however, walked past it every day with tight lips and sharp eyes, as if the empty space proved something she already believed. At first, Daniel said nothing. He avoided me, slept on the couch, and spent long hours staring at his phone. I tried to talk to him, tried to explain how empty I felt, how lost I was without our son. He nodded but did not hear me. His silence was worse than shouting. It felt like punishment that never ended. Clara filled that silence. She stayed longer than before, cooked meals I could not eat, and spoke softly to Daniel when she thought I was asleep. Sometimes I heard my name. Sometimes I heard the word jeans. When I asked what they were talking about, she smiled and said she was only helping him grieve. The first time Daniel blamed me out loud, it was raining. Water ran down the windows in thin lines, and the sound made my head hurt. He stood in the kitchen, fists tight, and said, "The doctors said it was genetic." He paused, then added, "Your side of the family has problems. Everyone knows that." I felt my chest close. I reminded him that no one in my family had ever lost a baby, that the doctors themselves said it was rare and random. He shook his head. "Clara talked to someone," he said. "She did her research." That was how it started. Every doubt he had, Clara shaped into certainty. Every fear, she gave a direction, and that direction always pointed at me. I began to question myself. I replayed my pregnancy in my mind, every meal, every step, every sleepless night. I wondered if I had done something wrong without knowing it. I wondered if my body had betrayed my child. Guilt wrapped itself around me so tightly that breathing felt like work. Daniel grew colder. He stopped calling me by my name. He spoke to me like a stranger who had overstayed her welcome. If I cried, he told me to stop making it about myself. If I stayed quiet, he accused me of not caring enough. There was no safe way to exist beside him anymore. Money became another weapon. He reminded me often that he earned more, that the house was in his name, that he had protected me by paying most of the bills. He said it casually, like facts, but each word pushed me further down. One night, during a fight, he said, "If you hadn't killed our baby, none of this would matter." Those words settled into me and stayed there. Clara never argued with him. She nodded. She sighed. She touched his arm and said, "He's hurting." She never said I was hurting too. Weeks passed. Then months. Friends stopped visiting. The house in Europe that once felt warm now felt like a courtroom where I was always on trial. I slept poorly and ate little. Sometimes I stood in Leo's room and whispered apologies to the air. One morning, Daniel handed me divorce papers. His hands did not shake. Mine did. He said he couldn't live with resentment anymore. He said he needed a fresh start. He said keeping the house would help him heal. The 18,000 pounds we had saved was already gone, moved quietly into an account I could not touch. I was too tired to fight. Too broken to argue. Part of me believed I deserved nothing. I packed my clothes into 2 suitcases. Clara watched from the doorway. She hugged me before I left and whispered, "I hope you find peace." Her voice was calm, almost kind. I did not answer. I left Europe with nowhere to go and landed in America because it was far enough to feel unreal. I rented a small room in a loud city, paying $900 a month from a job I took at a bookstore. I learned how to survive on less. I learned how to keep my story short. When people asked if I had children, I said no. At night, alone in that narrow room, Daniel's words came back to me. Clara's silence came back to me. I carried their blame like a second skin. And for a long time, I believed them. 7 years passed, but grief does not count time the way people do. It stayed with me through every small apartment, every late shift, every polite smile I learned to wear in America. I worked, paid rent, and lived quietly. I avoided hospitals. I avoided questions. Leo existed only in my thoughts, and even there, I kept him hidden, like something too fragile to touch. The phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon while I was shelving books. I almost ignored it. The number was unfamiliar, and I had learned that nothing good came from unexpected calls. When I finally answered, a woman's voice asked for me by my full name. She sounded careful, as if each word had weight. She said she was calling from a hospital in Europe. My knees weakened, and I had to grip the shelf to stay standing. For a moment, I thought this was a mistake, that they had the wrong person. Then she said my son's name. She told me there had been a review. An audit. A mistake in the records. At first, the words made no sense. They floated around me, distant and unreal. Then she said something that cracked the ground beneath my feet. They mixed up the medical files, she said. I laughed once, sharp and sudden. It sounded like a lie my mind told itself to stay alive. She continued, slower now. Leo did not die from a genetic condition. There was no defect. There was no inherited flaw. Someone had injected poison into his fore. Someone had chosen to do it. I slid down against the wall and sat on the floor, the phone pressed hard to my ear. My heart was beating so fast it hurt. The woman explained that new evidence had surfaced. Old security footage, recently recovered and reviewed. The investigation had been reopened. We know who did it, she said. The call ended with instructions, apologies, and a request for me to return. I don't remember hanging up. I remember staring at my hands and realizing they were shaking so badly I couldn't feel my fingers. That night, I did not sleep. Every memory rewrote itself. Every accusation replayed with a different meaning. Daniel's anger. Clara's certainty. The way blame had been handed to me so easily. I felt sick, then furious, then empty all over again. I booked a flight the next morning. The ticket cost $1,200, more than I could comfortably afford, but money felt meaningless. I would have sold everything I owned if I had to. The plane carried me back across the ocean, back toward the life I thought I had buried. When I arrived in Europe, the air felt heavier. The hospital looked the same, pale and clean, like nothing terrible could ever happen inside it. They led me into a small room with a table, 2 chairs, and a screen mounted on the wall. A doctor and an investigator sat across from me. Both looked uncomfortable, as if they knew no apology could be enough. They explained the timeline. The review. The footage. I listened, but my focus narrowed to the screen. When it turned on, the room went quiet. The video showed a hospital corridor. Then a room. Then a figure stepping inside. The camera angle was poor, the image grainy, but the movement was clear. Calm. Familiar. Someone who knew exactly where to stand and how long to stay. My breath caught before my mind caught up. The figure turned slightly, just enough for the face to come into view. I recognized her immediately. It was Clara. My sister stood there on the screen, wearing a nurse's coat, her hair pulled back neatly. She moved with confidence, checking the door, adjusting the fork, pressing the syringe as if it were routine. There was no hesitation. No emotion. Just control. I did not scream. I did not cry. I felt something colder and stronger settle into me. Understanding. Every piece fell into place with brutal clarity. The whispers. The research. The blame she fed Daniel. The way she stayed close while my life collapsed. The doctor asked if I was all right. I nodded because words were beyond me. I watched the footage again, forcing myself not to look away. Leo's death had not been an accident. It had been a decision. When the screen went dark, the investigator explained the next steps. Charges. Arrest. Media silence for now. He spoke gently, but nothing about this was gentle. I walked out of the hospital alone. The sky was gray, and the air was cold, but I welcomed it. For the first time in years, the weight on my chest shifted. Grief was still there, but guilt was gone. They had taken my child. They had taken my life apart. But they would never own the truth again. The arrest happened quietly, the way real consequences often do. There were no flashing lights outside the hospital, no shouting in the streets. Clara was taken in early in the morning, escorted out of her apartment in Europe by 2 officers who did not raise their voices. I was not there, but I saw the photographs later. She looked smaller than I remembered, her face bare of the confidence she once wore so easily. For the first time, she looked afraid. The investigation moved faster than I expected. The footage was clear enough. The poison was traced. There were records she thought had been erased. People began to speak once they were asked the right questions. Nurses remembered small things that had once seemed unimportant. A door held open too long. A badge used where it should not have been. Piece by piece, the story rebuilt itself, this time without me as the villain. Daniel called me 3 days after the arrest. I recognized the number and considered letting it ring. When I answered, he cried. He said my name the way he used to, like it meant something. He told me he had lost the house, the savings, his job. The £18,000 was gone, swallowed by legal fees and silence. He said he was sorry. He said he should have believed me. He said Clara had manipulated him. I listened until he finished. Then I told him the truth in a calm voice. I told him he did not just fail to protect me. He helped destroy me. I told him grief explained pain but did not excuse cruelty. He asked if we could talk more. I said no. I walked through the old neighborhood alone. The White House was still there, the one with blue shutters, but it no longer felt like mine. I did not stop. I did not need to. Memory does not require permission from buildings. The trial lasted months. I sat through it quietly, hands folded, listening as strangers spoke my son's name. Clara never looked at me. When the verdict was read, I felt no relief, no victory. Justice is not joy. It is simply the absence of lies. After everything ended, I returned to America. I went back to my small apartment, my steady job, my simple routines. But I was not the same woman who had left. The blame I had carried for years was finally gone, and without it, I stood straighter. I spoke more freely. I slept without waking in panic. I opened a savings account and put my first $2,000 into it, not for escape, not for anyone else, but for myself. I started telling my story, slowly, to people who needed to hear it. Other women. Other mothers. People who had been blamed because it was easier than finding the truth. Leo remains part of me, not as a wound, but as a presence. I speak his name without shame now. I let him exist in the world through my words. Silence protected the wrong people once. I will not let it do so again. This is my ending. And finally, it is my beginning.